After Effects composition, let me create a new solid, just a white solid, and let's apply Stipple. Now, if you see, there's a lot of random points here. Let's RAM preview and run the simulation, see what happens. See, they all converge into, they all resolve into a uniform pattern. This is what one would call blue noise. Now, what's in the footage here tries how these points interact with each other and how the simulation progresses forward. For example, let me delete this. And here I have a ramp. And let's apply Stipple to that ramp and see what happens. Initially, there's a lot of random points, and once you start running the simulation, you see in the darker regions of the image, a lot of points cluster, whereas in the brighter regions of the image, the points are a lot more sparsely distributed. Now, this is just a ramp example. Now let's delete this, and let's go ahead. Here I have a still image here of a nice classical painting, and let's apply Stipple to that one. Let's go back to frame 0. It's always good to start from frame 0, and let's apply Stipple. Now here I have, it starts with the random point. Let me increase the point size just a little bit so that it's more clear, and let's run the simulation. Okay, so here all those random points, they gradually resolve into a pattern that kind of resembles our source image. We have a simple image here that's just being zoomed out from this part of the map to the entire world map. Let's go back here and let's apply Stipple. And let's change the background color to black. And let's set the color, the point color, to white. And let's RAM preview to see what happens. Okay, so this looks good so far. This is a nice effect. But I like to map size mode to velocity, so let me just map it to velocity. And let's set the minimum size to 50%, and let's increase the point size a little bit to 5, so it's a little more prominent. Okay, that looks good. Now there is this, you're not limited to just the dots here, you can also use sprites. I have a composition here, it has a diamond sprite. Let's go back to this one. And let's go back to frame 0, and apply sprite layer, and let's turn the sprite layer off. And now let's run preview. So you have this interesting effect. Now this gets a little more interesting when you increase the stretch. That means it kind of takes its velocity and then kind of stretches it at each point. When you don't have a sprite, it just renders a line like this. You can create a cool effect, like kind of more streaks. And yeah. And now the cool thing is it even works with sprite layer. So if you have a sprite layer, so yeah, this is just one example of using sprites and their trails using the stretch layer here. That's it. I have a simple composition here with just a bunch of star shapes rotating, and let's see what happens when we apply Stipple to it. Now let's RAM preview and see what happens. So you can see that the Stipple tracks the motion pretty well, but it's not doing it completely. It's kind of the star shapes are moving too fast before the points could move to that location, or it's not enough force. So the first thing you could do is actually increase the attraction force. And let's go back to frame 0 and kind of see the image force map here. So you can increase the attraction force a little bit, 0.75, and increase the repulsion force of this area maybe to, I don't know, 0.1. And let's turn this off. And let's run the simulation again. Okay, so this is slightly better now, but it's still, the stars are still moving too fast before all the points kind of converge into that location. So what we can do is there's this parameter called simulation steps per second. This is the number of frames that Stipple simulates per every second. So you can crank it up really high, like say 500. You can keyframe this when, like, however you want. You can only select. You can only have a high value for only the fast-moving parts of the footage. But for now, let's just put it to 500. Let's go back to frame 0, and let's set to 50, and let's preview it. Okay, now you can see that the stipple patterns move exactly along with the footage, and it tracks the movement pretty well, and it's temporally pretty stable. It doesn't vary too much from frame to frame. So this is what the simulation steps like slider is useful for. The higher the value is, of course it takes more processing power, so you have to use it a little more carefully. Hey guys, let's see how forces and stipple work. Now I have a basic ramp here with the darkest pixel in the center and kind of brighter pixels on the outside. Now let's go ahead and apply stipple, and as we saw before, the points all cluster around the darker pixels here. Why does it happen? Because the darker parts of the image, they apply an attraction force on these points so that they all get clustered here, and the brighter parts of the image, they don't apply any force. That's why all these points, even though they start all these random locations, they gradually move towards where the dark pixels are in the image. We can see how the forces are being applied by the image by checking the image force map. And I can see that the force, this here, the red regions, is where the points are all attracted towards to. Now we can verify that. If we go back and set the point ripple force to 0, now when you run the simulation, they all kind of keep going and form a giant blob, because there's all of them are being attracted to one small region. We don't want that to happen. We want the points not to get too close to each other. So we need to have a ripple force. So let's set that back to 0, so that when the points get closer, they repel against each other. So that's when the points get close, but they don't all clump in one region. So that's how you get this nice pattern here. Now, right now, if you see the force map, only this region is applying the attraction force, but this dark region here, it's not really doing anything. So you can actually make it repel too. So if there are any points in this region, they don't just like stay there. For example, you see here, there's a lot of points here that are just like hanging around because there's no force being applied or anything, and this is just a little too far away. So you can actually make those points move by applying a repel force. So if you crank this up, the image repel force, let's crank this up really high just to demo. You see this blue region. So the blue region repels any points that are close to these pixels, and the red region attracts the points. So now when you run the simulation, Okay, so now when you run the simulation here, there's no points in this area because this region ripples all these points, so they all go towards the center based on the force map. So the blue regions ripple and the red regions attract. That's how it works. It's the same thing with any kind of still. If we take a still image here, let's remove this ramp and let's apply stipple. And let's see the image force map here. You can see that the red regions are where the points eventually will settle. And the black regions here, they're not applying any force or anything. But you can actually change that by applying a little ripple force if you want. But it's by default, the nothing in the image ripples the point, so they're kind of equally distributed. So once you select this and play, you can see that they kind of go to where these regions are. Let's see how color works in Stipple. Here I have a fish footage here. It's a nice looking fish. Now let's go ahead and click Effect, Robite, Stipple. Now let's leave the number of points at 2000, but I'm going to crank up the size so that it's a little more apparent. And let's go to image adjustments here. Let's see the image. Let's kind of increase the contrast a little more, so that the darker parts of the region are a little more apparent. And let's set the image ripple force to maybe 0.25, so you get a little bit of repulsion here. And let's turn this off and let's run simulation. Okay, so we see that the points are moving, creating patterns throughout the timeline, and now we want to apply some color. So right now the color mode is set to solid. You can put it to gradient so that it's applied to the velocity of the point. So the faster moving points have a certain color, and the slower moving points have a certain color. Here the faster moving points have a pink color, and the slower moving points have a yellow. So once the points kind of settle in place, they have a yellow color, but if they're moving, they'll have a pink color. You can add as many colors as you want. It doesn't matter. Okay, now the next color mode is every frame. Here, what happens is the color from the source footage is applied to each and every point, but that happens every frame. So the color of each point changes based on its position in the frame. Okay, so here you have a stipple simulation, and the color is being applied to each and every point, every frame, based on its position in the frame, which is great. But what if here the color is not consistent for every frame? So what if you want the color of each point to stay fixed? So you can do that by getting the colors only from one frame. So let's go to the frame that we desire. See, okay, this is probably good. And go here, click the single frame. You'll see an error message saying that no color data found because we haven't baked the colors yet. So click OK for now, and then you click Get Colors. Now the colors from this frame are applied throughout the video for all the points. So the color of each point stays consistent throughout the video. Let's run preview it and see what it does. Okay, so in this video, you can see that the color of each point stays the same throughout the whole simulation. It does not change as long as the source image doesn't change and nothing in the number of points remains consistent. You can change the frame if you want. If you don't like this color, you just have to click Get Colors again. So this is how the color modes in Stipple work. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you the next time. Now let's see how different size modes work in Stipple. Right now the size mode is set to constant, which means all the points have the same size. Now you can set that to say velocity, which means the velocity of each point is mapped to its size. Now you can make it so that points that are moving fast can have a bigger size or a smaller size depending on how you set the options here. So right now the minimum size is set to 25% of this point size, and the maximum size is set to 100%. So the points that are moving fast will have a bigger size, and the points that are moving slow will have a smaller size. Now let's increase the point size to 8 so that it's a little more amplified in this demo. And let's run preview, see what happens. Okay, so right now, so once the points are moving, the points are moving faster, have a bigger size, but the points that are still have a smaller size. You can actually map it the other way around. For example, you can have a minimum size of 100% and a maximum size of 25%. That means points that are still have a bigger size than points that are moving fast. So let's ramp preview that. So you can see there's a different sort of effects you can render using Stipple. And lastly, there is another mode called density, which means points, when the points are clustered closely, they can be of a certain size, and then when the points are kind of spread around, they could be a certain size. So let's set the minimum size here to say 25% and the maximum size to 100%. Here, points that are clustered here closely have a smaller size, but the points that are kind of spread out have a bigger size. Now you can really crank it up to really get a more pronounced effect. So this is really amplified, but here you see the points that are really far out, they have a much bigger size, and points that are really clustered here have a smaller size. Let's kind of tweak it a little, and let's put it to 200, and let's run preview, see how it goes. Okay, so you have that the points are rendered based on how clustered they are, and the sizes are kind of very all over the place. Hey guys, I have a text layer here that's just a single layer of text with a light gray. It's not completely white. And let's see, have a stipple here and have some basic force settings here. Let's see how it looks like. So it resolves into a nice pattern that's close to our text layer, but even after it resolves, you see there's a slight wiggle here. The points keep moving. It is because since this is a force simulation, even if the points all settle into a place, they're still interacting with each other. So that always causes some kind of minor movements or wiggle as it were to be. So there are like two ways to control that. You can decrease the total force to something lower. So you can keyframe, say for example, once they get closer, you can keyframe from like 100% to say like 50%. And let's run preview now. Okay, so now you can see that once the forces the system decreases, the wiggle is completely damped down, but you can see that these points are still interacting with each other, which is fine if that's what you want. But what if you wanted to completely stop? In that case, you need to adjust the simulations steps per second. Let's animate this from 100 to, say, from here, let's put completely 0. And now let's run preview. Okay, now the simulation comes to a complete stop, and nothing moves, everything just stays still. And here we have another composition. It's just that fish footage moving around. I did increase a little bit of contrast here to make it a little more apparent. And I've cranked up the points all the way to 4,000. Now let's see how it looks like. Okay, so this resolves nicely until the fish remains slow moving. But when it starts moving really fast, you could see that there's a lot of like randomness here, a lot of chaos. The reason why that happens is there's a lot of points clustered in that small region, so there's a lot of forces interacting, and there's like a lot of rapid movement. So to mitigate a situation like this, when you have fast moving objects in a footage, there are two ways to deal with this. First is say if you like right around this point, you can start bringing down the force in the simulation by animating this. Right now we have total force of 100%, and let's go a few frames down and let's bring it down to 25, and let's see how it looks now. Okay, now this looks good so far, and now once the fast movement comes in, it's a lot more visible than before, but you see that there's when here there's still there's still a lot of movement that's not fully formed yet. If you want to address this too, you can also, in addition to bringing down the force, you can also increase the simulation step count here. Now, you do have to remember, the higher this number is, the slower it'll be to render. So let's increase this from, say, 100 to, let's go to the next frame, and let's increase it to 500 so that it takes a lot more simulation steps. And let's see how it looks now. Okay, now let's see how this looks. You do get this nice resolve here, and then even when the fish moves faster, the lines are a lot more cleanly formed. Like, for example, if you see here, these lines, these stripes are a lot more fully formed here than in prior versions. You do get a lot of nice quality results if the simulation steps is high, but it does take longer to render. Just keep that in mind, and even if you go a little forward here, even these are pretty well formed. So this is an example of how to increase quality very precisely only in the images that you need using Stipple. So I hope you guys like it, and thank you for watching.